finally culminated in the two world wars, the Second World War. Since the Second World War, Europe has been at peace, not because Europeans became pacifists, but because there was a realization that the next time they play the traditional game of slaughtering each other, they'll wipe out the world. They've created such a culture of savagery and a technology of destruction that that game is over. Well, since in the Second World War also was a sharp shift of global power. The United States had been the most powerful economy in the world for a long time, far more than Europe, but it was not a major player in world affairs. It dominated the Western Hemisphere. There were some forays into the Pacific, but it was second to England and even France. Second World War changed all of that. The United States ended the rest of the world was seriously harmed or destroyed. The United States profited enormously from the war. The war ended the Depression. New Deal didn't. Industrial production practically quadrupled. The United States ended the war with literally half the wealth of the world, incomparable security and military force, and planners knew it. They planned for global domination, in which exercise of sovereignty by others would not be tolerated. The plans are interesting, and they were implemented. Europe, at the end of the war, there was a real wave of radical democracy, anti-fascism, the resistance, workers' control. Some of it was quite significant. And the first task of the United States and Britain, the conquerors, was to crush it. So in country after country, Japan as well, the first task of the liberators, so-called, was to crush the resistance to fascism and to restore the traditional order, maybe not under even with many of the same leaders, in fact. And it was a battle. It didn't happen overnight. So, for example, in Italy, Italy was probably the main target of CIA subversion, at least into the 1970s, when the record runs dry, to try to prevent Italian democracy, because it'd be a big role for the labor movement, which they couldn't tolerate. It gradually sank in. European elites accepted a position in which the United States would take over their traditional role of running the world by savagery and barbarism, and they would accept the gains that come from global domination. And there was it's not that the radical Democrats lost. I mean, Europe did gain, they did gain a measure of social democracy. In fact, Europeans live better than Americans in many respects. They're healthier, they're taller, they have more leisure. The United States has especially since the 1970s, has the highest work hours in the industrial world, about the lowest wages, the worst benefits, the worst health outcomes. Even just height. If an American goes to Europe, first thing that strikes you is how tall everybody is. And it's literally true, in fact. So Europe has had many gains from this subordinate position. Let the United States take the lead in invading, destroying, massacring, and so on. And a kind of a complacency has set in which it's almost a sigh of relief after centuries of savagery and barbarism. We'll relax and follow somebody else, let them do it, and we'll just enjoy life. And this has, in the political classes, business classes and so on, they don't have any objection to this. What you call Americanization is really the spread of business control. So yes, business classes are quite happy. They're closely integrated with, there's some conflict, but really closely integrated with U.S. industry. I mean, if you look at the conflicts, they're interesting. So we're supposed to have the ideology says we have a free market. In fact, we have state-based economic systems. The dynamism of the high-tech economy comes from the state sector, places like where we're sitting right now. And then it's handed over to private capital to exploit. And sometimes it becomes almost comical. So maybe the leading export, or one of the leading exports, is civilian aircraft. Civilian aircraft is now dominated by two companies, Airbus and Boeing. and they're constantly having battles in the World Trade Organization as to which one gets greater state subsidies. And in fact, they're both offshoots of state power. In the United States, an offshoot of the Air Force, and aerospace. It wouldn't exist without it. In Europe, it's massive state subsidies. And when they finally, recently there was a great horror in the United States expressed over the fact that Airbus won a contract to refuel Air Force for planes to refuel for the U.S. Air Force for refueling. Well, you take a look at the contract; it's integrated. It's a U.S. company working together with Airbus. Sure. That's what we call a free market. Sure. State-based industries which are integrated with one another. Sure. But for the European business classes and the American business classes, this is an acceptable arrangement. And since they largely dominate the societies, okay, that's what the propaganda and the doctrine says too. Sure. I suspect that right underneath the surface, a class struggle still exists and is understood and is ready to burst out at any moment. It's true you're not supposed to talk about it. Yeah. So one of my daughters teaches in a state college that's relatively poor students whose aspirations are to be a nurse or a policeman or something like that for the most part. In her first class, she asks them to identify themselves, their class background. Class is a funny word, most of them never heard it, but because you're not supposed to use that word. But the answers that she gets are either underclass or middle class. If your father has a job as a janitor somewhere, you're middle class. If your father's in jail, you're underclass. Those are the two classes, you know. Well, you know, that's an ideological triumph. Mm-hmm. The idea that class has something to do with who gives the orders and who follows them, that's been driven out of consciousness, at least on the surface. It's there right below. And as soon as you talk to working class people, they know it perfectly well.
Sure. No, I had promised not to abuse you, and I know that you are very busy, but I want to thank you. Just last question, a very personal one. And I really mean it. A lot of people in the world thank you so much for the work you do. But where do you get your strength? How do you move on? Because you are here in the center of the empire, speaking quite clearly to that powerful forces, and in that respect, being silent, being bitter, being marginalized, and meanwhile, all over the world, people read you, admire you, find your work extremely helpful.
See, I don't feel marginalized in the United States. When I go home tonight, I'll spend 5 hours answering email, and probably several dozen letters will be invitations.
I mean by the power structure.
I don't care about the power structure. I mean, that's not where I live. You know, if I wasn't their enemy, I'd think something's wrong. Right. So that's why I have that picture of the magazine cover prominently displayed. I'm doing the right thing. Right. So it's partly that, but it's partly things that are illustrated by some of those photographs over there. The one over there is the worst labor massacre probably in history. In Chile, a century ago, it was in Iquique. The mine owners are mostly British. These are miners who, I've been there. The mines are indescribable, but they marched about 30 kilometers to the town to ask for a slight increase in wages. The mine owners welcomed them. They brought them into a schoolyard, allowed them to have their meeting, and then brought in the soldiers and machine gun them all. Nobody knows how many were killed. You don't count the number of people you were killed, like maybe thousands. It's a century before there was any commemoration of this. That's a small monument, which I saw last year, that was put up by people, young people, who are just beginning to break out of the iron grip of the dictatorship. And it's not just Pinochet. Chile has a bitter history of state violence and repression. But now they're breaking out. So yes, the atrocity took place, and now we can begin to pay attention to it. That one over there is given, you'll know what it is, of course. It's a painting given to me by a Jesuit priest. Archbishop Romero was assassinated in 1980. 6 leading intellectuals, Jesuit priests, had their brains blown out by U.S.-run terrorist forces, the angel of death standing over them. That captures Reagan, not the cheerful uncle, but that's the reality of the 1980s. I just put it there to remind myself of the real world, but it's been an interesting Rorschach test. From people from the United States, almost no one knows what it is, because we're responsible for the massacres, so therefore we don't know. From Europe, maybe 10% of people know what it is. From South America, almost everyone knows what it is. Until recently, young people don't know, because they too are having history driven out of their heads. History and reality is too dangerous. On the other hand, they're coming back. So the IKK monument is young people rising up, wanting to recover the past and recover the idealism and do something about it. So that's enough to keep, more than enough to keep anybody going.
Thank you so much. It has been great, and you have a standing invitation to come to Barcelona, and on behalf of millions of people, thank you so much. Thank you. Good. Considereu que ha sigut una entrevista molt interessant. 45 minuts d'una veu crítica. Seria important que veiéssim la rellevància que el que Noam ha dit té pel nostre país. Com deia al principi, parla del futur i aquest futur no funciona si el model és als Estats Units. Una de les coses que ha dit, que crec que és important subratllar, és que una cosa és la llibertat d'expressió, que tothom pugui dir el que vulgui, i una altra és la democràcia, en el sentit de que aquest que es digui té que tindre accés als altres. Des d'aquest punt de vista, el problema més gran que té la democràcia als Estats Units, entre altres, és el gran control dels mitjans d'informació, dirigits, manipulats per grans grups econòmics i que canalitzen què és el que arriba a la gent o no. I des d'aquest punt de vista hi ha un enorme control del missatge, de la informació als Estats Units, que la persona més coneguda fora dels Estats Units no apareix mai en els grans mitjans de comunicació. Això és un tema d'una enorme rellevància i que, en certa manera, ja passa també en el nostre país. Veus d'esquerra no surten molt freqüentment en els mitjans de comunicació, catalans i espanyols. I certs missatges estan clarament discriminats. Per exemple, com és que no hi ha més articles crítics de la monarquia en el nostre país? Com jo li pregunto a Noam Chomsky, és estrany, perquè sembla que als Estats Units és una estructura tan sòlida que l'establishment es tindria que sentir molt segur i permetre's el luxe de tindre més diversitat. La mateixa pregunta es podia fer aquí a Espanya, a Catalunya. Com és que no hi ha veus antimonàrquiques en els mitjans? Si la monarquia és tan sòlida, està tan establerta, podríem permetre legitimar-la amb una diversitat més gran de veus crítiques. I en canvi no surten veus. I el que diu Noam Chomsky és veritat, perquè l'establishment està molt menys segur del que nosaltres ens creiem que està. I això és molt important. És molt important que aquest enorme control dels mitjans és perquè la gent que té el poder no està segura. I com passa als Estats Units, la gent normal i corrent del carrer és molt més progressista que no l'establishment desitja que sigui, i per aquest enorme control d'aquesta informació. L'altre punt que fa és sobre el fenomen Obama. El que estem veient als Estats Units és pràcticament la desaparició de la política i la substitució per uns missatges mediàtics que se centren molt en personalitats i les seves característiques. Si un té més experiència, si l'altre desitja més canvi, però sense, per exemple, en el cas de canvi, quin canvi s'està demanant? A través de quins instruments? Paradoxicament, el candidat del canvi està apoyat per alguns grups financers més importants dels Estats Units que són responsables dels problemes que existeixen, com per exemple en la sanitat. Aleshores, aquesta imatge de símbols, de missatges mediàtics, avui el poble dels Estats Units no sap ben bé què vol dir aquest canvi, excepte que ja està dit el que té. I des d'aquest punt de vista, això també és important, aquest missatge, que la política es desapareix substituïda per missatges mediàtics de tipus personal en xarxes mediàtiques que no tenen valor en quant a explicar la realitat i encara menys en quant a presentar alternatives. Això no vol dir que tots aquests personatges siguin iguals, representen interessos diferents.
I des d'aquest punt de vista, ell, naturalment, valora més la possibilitat que surti l'Obama que no McCain, que el McCain seria ja l'ultradreta. Però és important, no tant per lo que Obama és o diu, sinó perquè hi ha avui, als Estats Units, una sensació d'alienació, de descontent, de moviment anti-establishment, com també apareix en Europa. Recordem el que va passar en la Constitució europea, recordem en el que en diuen les enquestes, l'increment de l'extensió, la distància entre els representats i el representant s'està fent més i més gran. I això és el que ell parla. Aleshores, si aquest moviment anti-establishment es canalitza, pot inclús desbordar a la persona que d'una manera mediàtica apareixia com el missatge de canvi. El Roosevelt no era una persona molt progressista, però el fet de que havia en aquell moment un sentit de canvi va fer que el va forçar. Va ser la gent la que va forçar. No va ser el que va liderar el canvi, sinó que va forçar a que Roosevelt establís el New Deal, que és les bases de l'estat de benestar d'aquell país. L'estat de benestar en els Estats Units és molt deficient. I des d'aquest punt de vista, aquesta demanda, per exemple, per la universalització de la sanitat, de polítiques de plena ocupació, de salaris més altes, aquesta pressió és el punt clau que porta a la importància de l'organització, que és l'últim punt que crec que és molt rellevant per nosaltres. Quan ell subratlla tant que l'organització és clau, des d'aquest punt de vista, ell és optimista en quant als Estats Units, perquè creu que la gent, la classe treballadora, les classes populars, que quasi mai apareixen en aquesta situació, excepte que en les últimes eleccions es va redescobrir la classe treballadora, quan un negre per un costat i una dona per un altre eren plenament conscients de que guanyarien o no depenguessin que poguessin mobilitzar aquesta classe treballadora que havia inclús desaparegut del discurs polític. Això és molt rellevant aquí en el nostre país, en què quasi ningú, cap dirigent parla de la classe treballadora ni de la lluita de classes. Doncs això és el que està passant als Estats Units, i en Chomsky ho parla en tota claretat. Des d'aquest punt de vista també parla d'Europa, en què Europa no pot ser un apèndix dels Estats Units. La funció del govern federal dels Estats Units a Europa ha sigut enfeblir a les esquerres. Parla del cas d'Itàlia, podria parlar també del cas d'Espanya. Aleshores, Europa, sobretot l'Europa d'esquerres, es té que distanciar, independitzar d'aquest tutelatge de l'establishment dels Estats Units i el seu govern federal. I per últim, parlant del món, ell creu que el món té grans possibilitats, que hi ha un moviment antiglobalització que té que organitzar-se. I des del punt de vista acaba ell demanant una nova internacional, molt crític dels internacionals anteriors, i creu que s'ha d'organitzar un esquema en el que coordini, relacioni aquest moviment del qual ell creu que té un enorme potencial. Moltes gràcies.